If you're one of those people that wish you could utilize Exculpate and Gancelot in one deck at the same time with high consistency, then look no further, as Bang Dream got you covered.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and today we've got yet again a big reveal for the upcoming Bang Dream film live set, as we've got the second band revealed to us that this time is Pastel Palettes, or how you're supposed to pronounce this. But before we go into the video, let me address something that you guys have been correcting me about. In the previous Bang Dream video, I was referring it to as an anime show, or the game's what it is, but apparently it wasn't an anime. Well, it is an anime, but it's not where it originated from. It's apparently a mobile game that is a music rhythm game. Again, I have no experience with Bang Dream. I do not know where it comes from or what it is. I only know that it is a Bushiroad IP, as I've seen it many times before in the commercials and whatnot. But that's where my knowledge ends, and I only knew about the anime, and that's about it. So excuse me for my ignorance, and with the same thing about how you're pronounced to pronounce this name. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at the second band for Bang Dream, as this is going to be very interesting, as we already had the Pop and Party deck that is mainly a Royal Paladin-esque playstyle where you collect your field, you want to superior call all your units, build up your board, and then if you did that, you get a Artemis-like effect where your triggers will be distributed to all your units. So it's a Royal Paladin X Artemis. But now with this second band, this Pastel Palettes, we see a Gancelot X Exculpate at the same time. And yes, that is really good. So without further ado, let's jump right into these new cards and see what Pastel Palettes can do. And we start off, of course, with the right chain, just like we've seen with Pop and Party, only this time it's, of course, Aya Maruyama. And the starter is Dream Start Ayu Maruyama, and Maruyama's ability is basically the generic starter that's auto when rolled upon, draw a card, then if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 1 or greater, put a quick shield ticket in your hand. Just generic. Only this time, this card is actually pretty good because it stays in the soul, and you're gonna see in a moment here why that's good. So the second card that we have is the grade 1 version that is very hard working, Aya Maruyama. And her ability is auto Vanguard the rearguard circle. When placed, look at the 7 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 with Aya Maruyama in its card name from among them, put it into your hand, shuffle your deck, and if you put a card, discard a card from your hand. So this grade 1 is basically a searcher for herself, for the grade 2 and for the grade 3, which is nice because this is a very good consistency target for your right chain, as unlike the grade 1 for the Popping Party that can only search out the grade 3, this one can search out all 3 of the right chain, which is really good. But sadly, it's not a direct plus, as you need to discard, but that discarding isn't that bad, as we're going to see in a moment here, that you can utilize or set that up for future plays, so you can basically get more advantage from that discard. So overall, pretty solid right chain. Then we've got the grade 2 version that is Childless Idol Ayu Maruyama, and her ability is auto and Vanguard the rearguard circle. When placed, search your deck for up to 1 Pastel Palettes, put it into your soul, and shuffle your deck. This ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once per turn. So we got the hard main once per turn restriction on this card. So you would expect that this ability is really good. And basically what it does is you search out an archetype specific card and put it into your soul. That is really good, as we're going to see in a second here, because you can fix your soul and set everything up. So it's probably a good reason why this is hard once per turn. But you will see that in a moment here. Because the whole soul building thing is set up for the grade 3 and some of the other cards of the band members. And you can see it with this grade 3, Stacked Feelings Aya Maruyama. And her abilities is Continuous Vanguard Circle. During your turn, if your soul has 5 or more Pastel Palettes with different names, all Pastel Palettes on your Vanguard Circle and Rearguard Circle gets power plus 5k. If it has 8 or more, they get plus 10k instead of plus 5. So this is why you want to set up your soul with a lot of different names. And it's really awesome that the right chain is already helping you, because you already have the grade 0, probably the grade 1, the grade 2, and then you route up to this grade 3, which you already have 3 different cards in your soul. And then if you use the grade 2, then you can increase it to 4, and we have all other cards within this archetype, which will help us fill this even better. So getting this condition is not a hard thing to do. But then it also has a second ability, which is very familiar, as the second ability is Act on Vanguard Circle. If an order was not placed this turn, cast, counter plus 1, search a deck or drop zone for up to 1 Pastel Palettes music and play it. And if you search your deck, shuffle your deck. So this is the exact same skill that we've seen with the Poppin' Party grade 3, only that one searched for a Poppin' Party specific music card, and this will search to a specific Pastel Palette card. And this could be a setup with the grade 2, because the grade 2 you can discard the music card and then basically play it from this one. But you can also just search it out from deck, so you filter your deck for a card, which is probably the more ideal play, but you have options here. So this card is basically empower your entire field and swing with high numbers, as it can empower your side columns with an additional 20k and herself with a 10k, because don't forget, if we play the music card, your back row will not be able to put a unit on it and to boost the Vanguard. So that's something you need to keep in mind. But nonetheless, you're swinging with hard numbers here. This is of course the basic gist of what the deck wants to do. It wants to build up soul with different names and then swinging with hard hitting numbers. But that's not the only thing this deck can do, and you can also see the inconsistency of this is pretty good as we take a look at the supporting cast, basically the band members. And we're going to start off with the grade 1 lineup, and we have this drummer, mechanic drummer, Maya Yamato. And her ability is Auto Vanguard Circle. When placed, look at the 3 cards from the top of your deck, put any number of Pastel Palettes from among them into your soul, and put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So you can basically soul charge 3 cards and be almost done with your entire setup. As with the right chain and the grade 2 that will then activate, you're basically already at the 8 cards in soul with different names, if you're lucky with this soul charge. Also, you don't have to soul charge everything, because you can choose which card you want to put in soul. So if you already have a certain card that's already with that name in the soul, you can just put it on the bottom of the deck, because they're probably not triggers. Which is really nice, as you have some control over it. And with all the extra soul charging we're going to do with this deck, you might want to have a damper on that soul charging, so you don't go deck out to some extent. Then the second grade 1 that we've got as a support card is Samurai Heart Eve Wakamiya. And her ability is Auto Vanguard Circle. When placed, soul charge 1. Very simple, generic, you don't have any control over it, but it fills the soul, and if you're lucky, you hit a good target. Then the second ability is Continuous Vanguard Circle. If your soul has 5 or more Pastel Palettes with different names, this unit gets intercept and can intercept from the back row. So this is similar to the Angel Feather grade 1 that works with the Protect 2 marker to be able to intercept from the back row. This has the same thing, only you need to have 5 different units in your soul that are Pastel Palettes. Not a hard thing to do, and it allows you to have a 10k free shield that also works as an 8k booster to make magic numbers for your column, which is nice. It sets up soul, and it can potentially help you defend against your opponent if you need some extra shield for it. Then if we go to the grade 2 lineup, we have this grade 2 Genius Girl Hina Hikawa, and her abilities are Continuous Vanguard Circle and Guardian Circle. If your soul has 5 or more Pastel Palettes with different names, this unit gets power plus 5k and shield plus 5k. So this becomes a 15k attacker and a 10k interceptor or a 10k shield from hand if you set up your soul. But if that's the case, with the grade 3, this will turn into a 25k attacker on her own, which is pretty high numbers. With an 8k booster, which will then be an 18k booster, you will hit for 43k for doing absolutely nothing. That's really good, and the extra 10k shield is also really nice if you need some extra shield value or some defense value in that case. And that combined with the grade 1 that we just talked about, that's 20k shield that you will have available to you. Then we also have the second ability, which is Auto Vanguard Circle. When it attacks, cost counter plus 1, choose up to 2 Pastel Palettes from your drop zone, return up to 1 card from among them to your hand, and put the rest into your soul. This is a really good skill, as it is not restricted to a once per turn. So you can utilize this and then another card as well if you have the same copy, because it's not a hard one per turn like the main. The fact that you can choose 2 cards from a drop zone, put 1 in the soul, which can set up everything, and then 1 to hand is really nice, because that can give you extra shield value if you go for the grade 1. It can give you another attacker if you go for the second, if you want to go for the following turn. But if you, for some reason, have discarded the grade 3 from your hand, and this is on your grade 2 turn, you can utilize this to grab the grade 3, get it to your hand so you can ride it next turn. There are all options to this card to increase the consistency, and it allows you to keep things going turn after turn, because you can also fetch her from the drop zone to your hand, and then you can utilize the grade 2 as an interceptor, or it will be retired by your opponent by something like Kagero, Narukami or something, and then you can call another one from your hand to keep your engine going. So that's really, really nice. Then if we head over to the order cards, their new music numbers, we can see some interesting things here. As we have the grade 1 music card that is Shuai In Dreaming. Don't know what this is, basically a play on word for on the Japanese side, but I don't think that's translated really well in English, but okay. And its skill is auto Vanguard circle. When placed, if a Pastel Palettes is on your Vanguard circle or rearguard circle, draw 2 cards and discard a card from your hand. So if you have a Pastel Palettes on the field, you draw 2 cards and discard a card. Again, that discard might not be as bad because you can fetch it from the drop zone via different skills. And drawing into 2 cards is really nice, as you can set up things pretty effectively. But what's also interesting about this is that you need either a Pastel Palettes on your Vanguard circle or rearguard circle. So you might be able to splash this in one of the other bands if you can run 1 or 2 copies of another Pastel Palette card, so you can have access to this excessive amount of drawing. But overall, for Pastel Palettes, it's a pretty okay card, as it allows you to draw into more cards, so more shield value, more options, and probably also more consistency overall. Then if we go to the grade 3 music order card, we have Kumai Flower, and its ability is continuous on rearguard circle. If your soul has 8 or more Pastel Palettes with different names, when your Vanguard with Aya Maruyama in its card name would attack, so basically the grade 3 or the whole right chain, but this is a grade 3 order, so you need to be on grade 3, it battles all of your opponent's units. So that is basically the same thing as Exculpate. It attacks everything, also the back row. So this is really good against decks that relies on their field. So something like Royal Paladin or even Kagero, because they probably cannot refill the fields very easily. This is also really good against Pop and Party because you destroy their entire board, which they really rely on. And basically anything that's Axel will hurt from this effect. So that's really nice if you need a board wipe that's basically free. It doesn't cost you counterless, soulblast whatsoever. If you have this in hand, great. If you don't, counterless 1 with a grade 3, fetch it and destroy everything. So this is a really, really solid music card that is probably at least gonna be run at 1 or 2 copies for this specific band. It's just really that good. But it's not the main attraction here. And you might already notice that when I went over the band members, I only talked about 1 grade 2. And I skipped over the second grade 2, as we need 5 band members to make the complete band here. And I did that for a reason, because this skill is really weird and only makes sense if we then immediately go over the music order card that goes alongside that specific card. And the card that I'm talking about is this grade 2 Stoic Idol Chisato Shirasagi. And her abilities are continuous on Vanguard circle. If your soul has 5 or more Pastel Palettes with different names, your Vanguard with Aya Maruyama in its card name gets power plus 5k. So this is really confusing here, because she has a Vanguard skill, but if your Vanguard is the right chain unit, then that unit gets plus 5k power. So how can you have this as a Vanguard unit, but also the other as a Vanguard unit? At first glance, I thought this was a misprint on the effect itself, that it should be a rearguard circle, but that's not the case, as we're going to see in a second here how this is possible. But it also has a second ability, which is act on Vanguard circle and rearguard circle. Once per turn, cost, put a Pastel Palette from your hand into the soul, and return up to 1 card without Chisato Shirasagi in its card name from your soul to your hand. So this skill basically allows you to swap a card from your hand with something in your soul. That's really good for multiple reasons. One, it allows you to set up the soul with all the different names which you want to do. But the other thing is, if you accidentally soul charge a specific card with the grade 1 that just blindly soul charge something, or the other grade 1 that checks stop free, and you see a card that you actually want in your hand, then you can put it into the soul and fetch it out with this grade 2. So if you utilize this on the grade 2 turn, and you see the grade 3, you can fetch it out from the soul and have your right target for next turn. If you see a trigger and you want more defense, you can fetch it out. If you see a music card that you need, you can fetch it out. So this is really solid for overall value. And it doesn't cost you anything because you just swap a card from your hand with a card from the soul. Also, you don't have to put out a card from the soul into your hand because you can say, I will choose nothing. That's only a smart move if you can only attain the 5 different names or the 8 different names in soul if you keep the card into the soul. But in most scenarios I would advise against it because this probably is not the smartest play to actively minus you something unless you can win the game on that turn. Then it's fine to minus all the cards you want. So this card is a really good setup card for everything, but also is really nice for just powering up your Vanguard. But once again, this Vanguard skill is really odd. So let's talk about the grade 2 music card that will make sense of this whole scenario. Because the grade 2 music card, Yura Yura Ring Dong Dance, again, not so sure if the name really works in English, but fine. Has the ability, act on Rearguard Circle once per turn if you have a unit with Aya Maruyama in its card name, and it says unit, so it can be either be Rearguard unit or Vanguard unit. Cause, discard a card from your hand, search your deck or drop zone for up to 1 card with Chisato Shirasagi in its card name, call to the front row rearguard circle, and if you search your deck, shuffle your deck. If you have a Vanguard with Aya Maruyama in its card name, the circle with the called unit on it becomes a Vanguard circle until the end of turn. Vanguard circle abilities activate and perform drive checks. So, basically, if you have the right chain unit onto the board, you use this music order card, you discard a card, and you search out the grade 2 Shisato Shirasagi. But if the right chain unit is your Vanguard, then that unit will also be regarded as a Vanguard circle. So as a Vanguard unit. So that's basically the Blaster Blade Gancelot interaction. That's really good for multiple reasons here. Because this is a grade 2 order card. And the combo is with a grade 2 unit. So you can do the whole Gancelot play on grade 2 while your opponent is probably grade 1. Because nothing here costs Counterblast or Soul Blast. That's really good. Because what you basically can do is write into the grade 2, search your deck for up to 1 card, put it into the soul, then use the order card to search out the grade 2, rearguard Shisato Shirasagi, call to the rearguard circle, it becomes a Vanguard circle because you have the right chain unit on your Vanguard. Then you utilize her Vanguard rearguard circle skill to put a card from your hand into the soul, then fetch something out if you need something. And with the other grade 1s, you can probably set up your soul with maybe 5 different names, but you don't have to do that. But if you can, your Vanguard gets an additional 5k, so your Vanguard swings for 15k. And while you then attack, you attack with a 15k Vanguard with a single drive, and then you also have a Rearguard, which then also will be treated for Vanguard. So you have another unit for 10k, maybe 18k if it's boosted, with another single drive, while your opponent is still at grade 1. That's really good. And if they then try to rush against you or try to put up an offensive against you, you can then, the following turn, go into your grade 3 and then utilize your Exculpate attack and wipe their entire board if you need to. But if they didn't call anything, then you can basically do the whole thing again and call to the rearguard circle your another Chisato Shirasagi and attack with a twin drive Vanguard and a rearguard with another single drive. Only in this time, your units will probably have an additional 10k because you have enough units in your soul with different names. So you can see that this deck, Pastel Palettes, is a lot more aggressive. But also the difference here is that it works on a setup strategy. You want to set up your soul with the different names. And once you've done that, you're basically done for the rest of the game. You set up everything, and no matter what your opponent will do against you, you will go off. You will do your thing. And you also aren't forced to run specific units onto the board to make a good field. That's not necessary. You don't have to call all the different members to make things work. You only have to set up the soul, and then you can call whatever you want to the field. If you cannot utilize the Rearguard Vanguard's ability, you can probably call the other grade 2 times, and then allows you to get all the cards from a drop zone to your hand, stuff more cards in your soul, and also have multiple interceptors with a lot of shield value, so you can play a defensive game after you put a lot of offensive against your opponent. So this is a really interesting strategy in contrast to what we see with the Pop and Party, where everything basically resolves around setting up the board and keep setting up the board as you need a perfect field to put out your powerful plays. In this case, you don't have to do that, which is really interesting and also opens this archetype up to incorporate maybe other cards from the other band members, as you don't necessarily have to have a full field with Pastel Palettes to make everything work. Only your soul needs to do that, but with all the support cards that we've seen, we can set up that soul very securely and precisely, so you don't have to worry about non-Pastel Palettes that are in your deck. So I think this archetype is really powerful and has a lot of potential because you have access to a Gancelot mechanic and an Exculpate attack. And the most important thing here is that those things are not restricted to a higher grade or to your opponent's grade. So as I explained, this Gancelot attack can happen on your grade 2 turn while your opponent is still grade 1, and you can utilize the Exculpate on your grade 3 turn, so you don't have to run grade 4s and the inconsistency of riding up to grade 4. You can do it on your first grade 3 turn while your opponent is probably still grade 2. Don't know if that's something you want to do because there's probably not a lot to Exculpate there. But if they do, then they made a grave mistake, because you don't want to allow your opponent to do that if you're up against this deck. But that wasn't the only thing that we've got today, as we saw some more reveals. The first one, of course, is that, to nobody's surprise, they are going to get a Draw Sentinel PG. That is, everyone made the number 1 stage. And this is basically what we came to expect with the crit triggers and draw triggers and heal triggers that we can run at multiple copies. Well, not the heal, but well, the draw and the crit. And speaking of those triggers, we also saw the new artwork for those same triggers, and these arts are basically with the band members of Pastel Palettes. So what we can expect is that these triggers, which we can run multiple copies of, are going to be printed in 5 different versions for every single deck. And that's probably the reason why we can run multiple copies, so you can collect the 12 copies or 6 copies, 8 copies and 4 copies of the band you're going to play. Which is a nice, interesting touch, but at the same time will probably be annoying to collect if you open up boxes and you get random triggers all over the place and you want only from your specific band. But hey, maybe that's your kind of thing, to mix up the triggers and just give every OCD opponent a nightmare. Also, another thing that we got, but not from the live stream today, was the artworks of the upcoming SPs and SSR for this set. And I'm gonna put them on the screen right here. And this is basically what we're gonna see for the main grade 3s. And the SP version will be with the signature of the character, so the in-game character or the in-anime character, whatever your shtick is here, with their personal signature. And the SSR will be with the signature of the voice actress behind those characters. So whatever kind of person you are and whatever your fancy with, do you rather want to have the signature of the character or you want to have the signature of the voice actress? Both can have their way, but then again, probably the SSR is much harder to get by than the SP, so if you want to have the voice actress one, you probably need to wail a lot over this set. But that's basically all we've got today. We've seen a very interesting new take on this deck for Bang Dream, as now we have a setup deck that works on the soul, and once you're done with the setup of your engine, you can do whatever you want. Then you have the availability of a Gancelot and Exculpate attack, which is really interesting, that sure already exists in one single clan for Royal Paladin, but Royal Paladin can never get the same access to those different cards at the same time, like we've seen for Bang Dream Pastel Palettes. So with this second archetype out of the way, I'm very curious of what the other 3 bands are going to do. I expect at least that one of the 3 is going to focus around retiring, so they will have some field control options and can destroy your opponent's field. There will probably be one that will attack with multi-attacks or something, but then again, in the Forest Clan, that might be a little bit too broken, but maybe they can figure it out. And then for the third, I have honestly no real idea what they can do. Maybe they can go for a defensive playstyle, but then again, with Forest, a good defensive playstyle might be a little bit too strong because you will attain more and more Forest markers over the game. But then again, that does work with the stall game or a more controlled deck that will win over time. So it makes sense to give that to Force. So we have to wait and see what the other bands or archetypes will do. Only time will tell, but I expect that in probably 1 or 2 weeks, we can see once again a live stream of Nuck Sensei or Nuck that will then reveal the third band for Bang Dream. But that's basically everything for me today. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of this new archetype for Bang Dream, Pastel Palette, the second band for this new set that is Bang Dream Film Live, as it is a really interesting take to the whole shtick of Bang Dream itself, as this is the second part of this title booster for Vanguard. So let me know all your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, then head over to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a Patreon today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one!